I mean, a lot of people didn't grow up here, but I've been here since 1984. Product of public schools: Laurel Mountain Elementary School, Canyon Vista Middle School, Westwood High School, University of Texas. Went to D.C. 10 years, came back 10 years ago. And, in those early years, I really wasn't that involved at the local level. I was building my business. I was focusing on getting, kind of reconnected into my community in my own way, but not really with local politics. For me, what happened is I office downtown. I office in 8th and Brazos.
Okay.
And so when the ordinance took effect July 1st, 2019, it was a profound effect downtown, and where the area where I office, which is just a couple blocks from the Capitol.
You see it. You see all that shit, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it right away, and so I was kind of shocked. But immediately, I thought it was a downtown problem only.
Well, I think it was at first, right? And to be honest, I didn't expect this to happen. So when I was running for mayor, and you could say whatever you want about my mayoral campaign.
You ran.
I ran, right? But
man in the arena.
Yeah, facts. But there was a lot of, I could kind of see things headed in that direction. And at the time that I was running, I didn't really see it being that big of a deal because the old model of 5 cops harassing one homeless guy seemed like a kind of a waste of resources. It seems like it's a waste of taxpayer money for them to just go in and out of the system because we pay for them to go to jail and, have to do all these services and whatnot. So when they were like, hey, we're not going to punish people for that, I figured, okay, that's great. Maybe now it'll give the cops more resources to actually arrest real criminals, right? So at first I was okay with trying something new. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, the backlash was something I never even expected. All my friends were furious at the city council, right? My girlfriend was not wanting to go downtown anymore. It just got the backlash right off the bat got bad. And then all of a sudden within a few weeks, right? Or a couple weeks, you just saw a flood of homeless people downtown. And there was nothing that was done to mitigate this in any capacity. Nothing. And it just mushroomed out of control, and it seemed like there was no willingness to accept community input unless it was something that the city fully agreed with, right?
Totally.
And that's, I think, how it started rubbing people the wrong way.
No, that's right. I mean, when you get elected to a representative position in government, like a member of the city council, we have single-member districts now with 10 districts. You're supposed to represent your district, right? And I would say with probably the one exception being Mackenzie Kelly, it's pretty hard to make an affirmative case that the other 9 members of the city council are representing their districts.
I would agree with that, right?
I mean, they're not interested in getting feedback. As you said, they want things that basically confirm what they already were going to do. If you go to a city council meeting, and I've testified at least 3 times in the last year and a half, they make it as hard as possible for average people to participate, right? You don't know when you can have a chance to speak. You have 3 minutes. You have to get there at 10 a.m. The first time I went there, I testified at 1:30 in the morning.
Yo, and then if it's packed, they cut it into 1 minute or a minute and a half.
Sometimes
they'll cut it in half.
Sometimes they do that. They go into you get there for an hour, then they go into executive session for 2 or 3 hours. They make all the decisions, then they come out, pretend to listen to you, and then they vote at the end of the night.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, and now it's even worse because everything's through Zoom, which makes no sense because this virus has been shown to have an extremely low fatality rate, and it has a very minimal effect on people who actually get sick with it. Probably because viruses mutate into less deadly and less potent forms over time. But they're still not having in-person meetings. And yeah, like you said earlier, Mackenzie's the only person that you see downtown in City Hall, right? And
yeah, I mean, she's truly interested in understanding how her constituents feel about issues, and she listens. And I wish the other 9 members of the city council, did that. From all the evidence I've seen, and I was a resident in Northwest Hills. Alison Halter as my council member. Know some of the other council members. A couple of them I actually have relationships with.
I think Alison's pretty cool.
Yeah, Allison's fine.
Allison's cool.
Paige Ellis is a nice person. But at the end of the day, it's not whether they're nice or not, but whether they're doing things that are good for the city or not. And I don't even make this personal. For me, I don't hate anybody.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody, to have a bad life or a bad, future or anything like that. What I care about is this city a place where you can live, work, and raise a family? And unfortunately, our city council and our mayor have made it far worse the last 2 or 3 years, and that's why we're standing up and saying no.
Yeah, and it's also going to be impossible, homelessness or not. That rail has just made it almost impossible for regular people to do that.
Well, if you look at the homeless issue, it's, to me, the debate is over, right? The policies failed. Even the mayor had to admit that. 2 days after we turned in 27,000 petitions in February, 569 days after the petition, the ordinance, after the ordinance to the ban repeal was passed, he finally admitted that it had failed, and it has failed, right? Every city park is worse. Every major intersection is worse. Every neighborhood is worse, and the homeless are worse. This, to me, I don't even think is debatable.
No, it's not. It's 100% fact.
Right, and so the question now is, and we're talking 3 or 4 days here before the election on May 1st, the question is, do you like where we were, 2 years ago before the ban was repealed, when there was no crisis, when we were getting 93% voluntary compliance, according to the Police Association, in terms of the camping ban. Only 7% of the time, you're talking about throwing people in jail, only 7% of the time were the police giving a citation, not throwing in jail, giving a citation to someone who refused to comply with the camping ban. Do all those people go to jail? No. The ones who can't pay a fine, who can't work it out, could go to jail.
Right, but chances are, if you're homeless in the street, you probably can't pay the fine.
Yeah,
so that's the
it's an issue. It's an issue.
That's
no
the echo argument. That's the nonprofit argument. That's what they're going to.
Yeah,
to
and look,
say,
and
right?
I'm not against all camping. I'm against unregulated camping.
Yeah,
right.
I saw you talk on Brad Swell, and you said like that exact same thing.
Yeah, and it's important. I think it's an important distinction because listen, you have regulated camping in San Antonio. San Antonio has a camping ban, and they have one place you can camp. It's Haven for Hope. It's a regulated central campground, and they have basically no homeless problem. Here we have unregulated camping. There's campgrounds all over the city. They're unsafe. They're unsanitary. You have sex trafficking, human trafficking, stabbings, rapes, even murders occurring on a daily and weekly basis in all these places. I mean, truly, ask any police officer if you don't agree.
No,
anyone out there doesn't agree with me.
I'm not arguing anything. I think that it's a little bit deeper than surface level crimes, though.
Oh, sure.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I think that the city should have done a much better job of giving money to mobile loaves, which they finally started doing. I have a buddy named Blake Carter who runs a charity called Serve Inspire, where they provide job training and toiletries to the homeless. And I think that he's had a pretty difficult time communicating with the city or getting any kind of funding from the city when they're literally trying to provide the homeless with something that they don't even get from people. Because if you're homeless, what are you getting most of the time? Food, right? And you hear stories of homeless people that gain weight being on the streets because of all the people that are just feeding them constantly. You know what they don't get? Toiletries, toothbrushes, deodorant, right? Like, they don't get that. They don't get, like, clean clothes. Vocational training. Yeah, the vocational training is lacking. Like, there's so many, like, unoccupied offices right now, unoccupied apartments. You could house these people. You could house the homeless in those areas, pay somebody to, like, help do job training, pay somebody to help do rehab stuff, pay somebody to, like, to help provide avenues for these guys to get off the streets, and it's just not being done. Instead, you're just spending millions of dollars on hotels, which is it's just everything they're doing, man. Like, it's just pissing people off and making people become a lot less liberal and become a lot more disenchanted of the homeless.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's actually one of the really negative consequences of all this. So I went out for 5 hours earlier today with a deputy constable who specializes in the homeless area. Rode around with him. We went into campgrounds, campsites. We went under highways. We talked to 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 homeless people over the entire day. One of my takeaways from that experience is that the homeless are, number one, a lot of them are hungry. They're not. I didn't see a lot of them that were gaining weight. But
because I
that's
saw
okay.
like
That's all right.
I saw that the Aurora, Colorado mayor talked about how he like gained weight and was always getting fed. He went undercover as a homeless person. And
sure, and who knows? I mean, all this stuff that's an anecdotal thing. That could be correct. Could be, who knows? Could be a one-off thing. It's sort of hard to know. But what I was going to say is, our homeless deserve compassion, and I understand people who don't like what I'm doing may think that that's a rich thing for me to say. I believe that if we reinstate the camping ban, what will happen is that it will force the city to actually produce real solutions. One thing I think we can all agree on is the city has totally failed to produce any real solutions over the last 2 years. And the thing that should anger you and every other taxpayer is that they've spent $161 million the last 3 fiscal years. We have almost nothing to show for it. This year, they're spending $73 million plus $225 from the federal government. Right? That's over $300 million. And their approach is going to be motels and hotels and all these other things, rather than the two things that we know work. Number one is a centralized, regulated campground like Haven for Hope, where you have services on site. Job training, mental health treatment, drug and alcohol abuse treatment. You have caseworkers on site. You have showers. You have electricity. You have toilets. It's all right there. It's self-enclosed. You have police there. That's number one. That's something we need immediately. Second is we need the Alan Graham Community First model. We need the Camp Esperanza model. I went there today and toured it. They're building micro homes there as well, both transitional and more long-term. They're building something like 225 of them over the next few months. So those are the models that are going to work. What doesn't work is the model we saw in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, and Honolulu, which is basically open camping, whatever you want, wherever you want, whenever you want. You increase the size of the homeless population. You don't get them any help. You feed all of their worst addictions, and their lives become worse in the process.
And you also make the homeless unsafe from other homeless.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because if you're living in a tent, right, and I brought this up with Ann Howard, right? Like, there are homeless people that are scared to leave their tent because they're scared of another homeless person taking stuff from their tent. And you got a lot of people who are homeless that, I mean, a lot haven't, right? But there's a sizable number, right? Considering the population keeps increasing, there's a large chunk of homeless people that have been through the system, that have gone to jail, that have spent years in that system, right? Not everybody. I'm not even going to say most people, but there's enough of them out there, right? And that, like, if you're in jail, right, like, there's a petty mindset that comes with that, you know, and there's a predatory behavior that comes with that. And if, you know, you see somebody that's like a weaker inmate, you'll prey on them, right? And if you see a weaker homeless person, you're going to pray. What's going to stop you from preying on them too? And a lot of these people, the people that you see ranting and raving and hollering and begging for money that look the saddest and the most desperate, you have to be like almost naive to think that they're not getting bullied or taken advantage of by other homeless people, or the people that are just selling drugs in the tents or whatever the situation may be. Like, you have to be completely blind to not even consider that a possibility. And like, the more you enable that, the more you're like, you actually could be hurting vulnerable homeless people. Like, and I don't think that's not even been talked about, right? So
no, and that goes back to I agree with you. I agree with all that. I mean, that goes back to this question of, are the homeless better off today than they were 2 years ago? And I don't think they are. I really don't think they are. I think you have more of them using illegal drugs and being more addicted to drugs than they were 2 years ago. You have more of them out in the elements. Look, this idea that a tent is a home is ridiculous. Greg Kassar believes a tent's a home. It's not a home. We had something between 50 and 60 unidentified people in Travis County die during the winter storm. Okay, now the city says only 9 of them were homeless. I don't think that's correct. But let's say it was 9 people. Do you believe a tent was a home for those 9 people that could not get into warm weather shelters?
They could literally use the garage at City Hall to house the homeless. While this was happening, they didn't do it, right?
Now, they did open some warm weather shelters, to be fair. I think the Convention Center may have opened. I forget there were a couple others. But obviously, it's a challenge. And when you have the population double, as I believe it has, since July 1st, 2019.
Probably more, honestly more.
I believe we're at least 5,000 today. It's impossible to know for sure. But I believe we're at least 5,000 today. When you have that population double, it becomes harder to get all those people into warm weather shelters when we have a 100-year winter event.
Yeah, and also, just to be honest, too, like, what got me really mad, like, as somebody who drives a pedicab downtown, like, when you're doing these lockdowns and you're actively telling me that I can't make a living, and then you get all this funding, and you literally give us none of the funding, you literally provide us with no funding when you took away, like, my ability and my friend's ability and, like, the people who I work with downtown in the bars and whatnot, like, to make a living, like, and then you give it to the homeless people. Like, this literally, the actions of the city in how they distributed some of their money when they defunded APD, it's creating more anti-homelessness. Like, everything that like the council has been doing in terms of responding to this, it's been doing the opposite. It's created way more anti-homelessness. I'm sure even if you're homeless in Austin, you probably get treated a lot worse now because of the ban being lifted than you did when there was a ban. Like, I used to be way more interested and way more inclined to give homeless people money, and now I just don't do it anymore because I just got turned off by, like, all of this. You know what I mean, man? Like, it's like, there's you got to look at it from that possibility. And, you know, did you read the article on, like, Mackowiak saying about how, like, restaurants are, like, have a shortage of staff? Yo, you have a shortage of restaurant staff. You got a surplus of homeless people. Yo, what do you think they should be doing? Like, why is the city not putting money or funds into, like, partnering with, like, the Texas Restaurant Association and just get these guys to become dishwashers, busboys, waiters, bartenders, whatever? Like, you're going to make video game money right now, especially with everything fully open. Like, like, a lot of the problems that they're dealing with mostly have to do with money. Some have to do with, a lot probably have to do with drugs too. But from a money standpoint, you'll get into housing if you just work a few weekends downtown right now. You're in a literal economic boom. Just get people to take advantage of the situation. No one's doing that. It's aggravating, man. You know, like, it's just...
Look, I think if you step back for a second, look, the last 2 years have been a disaster for our city. And it's not just the homeless camping ordinance. It's broader than that. I really believe that if you look at public safety, right, we talked about the defund for a second. We have the same number of police officers today in April 2021 that we had in 2008, when our city was 45% as large as it is today. Does anyone think that's a good thing? Does anyone think that's good for public safety? Does anyone think that leads to less crime? Of course not.
No, of course not, yeah.
Right? And it's worse than that, right? We can't hire, we can't retain, we can't recruit, we can't pay overtime. We can't even graduate the most diverse cadet class in the history of our city, right? Because they're holding it up for months and months and months and months. Now, look, if there was
I think
racism,
there's a silver lining to this, though, Matt.
If there was racism in the training, we need to root that out. We need to improve it. But that doesn't mean you have white liberals telling minority cadets who gave everything and went through training and said, I want to be a police officer in your city, graduate me on the schedule you agreed to, and then they're held out for months and months and months and can't make a living. We've lost 26 of them in the last 2 months while they've been dithering at the city council level.
That's all bad, right? But I actually kind of think that there might be a silver lining to this depending on how you play. Well, So I think that we should reimagine policing, right? But not the way that like the city wants to do it. You know, like I think that you're using like outdated training methods like Krav Maga and Spear and all that stuff when you should be doing MMA and jiu-jitsu training for the cops and the officers. They should be able to get maybe the same EMT, have to have the same EMT basic certifications as a regular EMT or a firefighter, you know, because you're the first one on this. Yeah.
And you wouldn't have these deaths where people are dying with choking probably if you have
and also
EMS trained
well
police.
also if you got like at least a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, right, or you're just training in a combat sport, you're more likely to know how to do the choke properly so you don't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
You know, I've been choked out before. You know what's happened to me? Nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the person doing it knew what they were doing.
Knew they were doing. So I think that, you know, you have a really unique opportunity, and I think in 2 years you're going to get a much different city council because of everything that's happened. And
that
you
is
might
a
get
silver lining, and that's a big part of something I want to be involved
in. And you're going to get a new city council that will be more willing to like actually negotiate with the police union to say, okay, man, like you got a funding problem. The past administration, they took your money away. That's not right, and we really want to give you back your money. But you guys need to revamp how you train your officers so that they're safer on the street and there's more emphasis on mental health. You start incorporating yoga in the police departments.
Sure.
I'm in
favor of very specific things, okay, Alex? I mean, number one, we have to improve training. Yeah. I don't know anyone thinks we should not improve police training. Not even the police association believes that, okay? That's number one. Number two, we need more accountability. I believe in that. Now, I
think jiu-jitsu does help that.
Here's what I don't believe in. I don't believe you have a DA like in Margaret Moore who reviewed the cases of some of these incidents that happened. They no-bill these police officers. The police officers are found to have violated no policy and committed no crime. They get no-billed by the DA's office. We elect a left-wing, far left-wing, new DA who then goes in and panels grand juries and goes back and brings indictments against police officers. Now, look, I'm not saying in every one of those cases an indictment shouldn't happen. I haven't looked at every single one of the cases. What I can tell you is his approach right now is making our city less safe. Do you know why that is?
Oh.
He's prosecuting police officers and not prosecuting criminals. That is how you have a much less safe city.
Yeah, there is something to be said about that. That is concerning, right? When you get like the lowest type of sentences for violent crimes and violent offenses, like that's dangerous. And then when you're overly trying to I mean, look, and if a cop does something really fucked up, right? Like they should be prosecuted and held accountable.
100%,
right? So that's not even
I have
necessarily
no problem with the Derek Chauvin.
I have no problem
obviously.
with that either. No problem with that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying though is that I think that another reason why I'm like down with Prop B and I'm telling other people to vote for Prop B is because you need a buffer. You always need to have a buffer so that things don't go too fully in one direction.
Yes.
And
it's a way to pull things back.
Yeah. So like if we had like a super right-wing DA, right? Maybe I'd have a different stance on the camping stuff, right?
Yeah.
But we don't. We have a super left-wing DA. We have a super understaffed police department. The people that are worried about the homeless going to jail for what's happening and getting records and being dragged through the system, I honestly don't think I think it's kind of going to be a huge non-issue because our DA is our DA doesn't believe in really prosecuting people unless he absolutely has to, like, which is not horrible. Like he believes in like restorative justice more than punitive measures, and so even with this camping ban in place, which it's gonna get passed with flying colors, I'd be really surprised if it doesn't. I don't see it really like messing with the lives of the homeless too much because of who the DA is, and I think that like. I've told a lot of my left-wing friends that so they can feel a little bit more at ease when it comes to this because if you let things get too out of hand in one direction, you'll get a backlash that's equal and opposite, and that's something that nobody wants. Like you don't want Austin to become a super right-wing city either.
No.
And I think that like
and I don't want that.
No,
that's not my goal.
Yeah, you want to have a stopgap. I think Prop B is just a simple, healthy, effective stopgap. It does. I don't think it addresses homelessness at all, right? I don't think it like helps people get off the street, but you know what it does do? It forces the city to come up with better solutions.
Exactly. So it does two things. Number one is it does three things. Number one, it stops pretending that the ordinance is working. Okay, it's not working. It's failing in every single way, and I would say 90% of the people who live in the city agree that the ordinance is failing. The second thing it does is it prevents the future growth of the population. If we were at 2,500 homeless people when the ordinance passed, the council took effect July 1st, 2019. And if we're at least 5,000 now, that means we've doubled in 2 years.
It's bad.
And I believe we're going to double again in 2 more years.
Yeah.
We're going to go from 2,500 to 10,000. The third thing that it does is what you identify, which is it will finally force the council to spend money efficiently and effectively, to provide actual safe and sheltered environments for the homeless. That's what we want.
Yeah, and it also sends
they don't
a message.
think they need to do that right now because they think a tent is a home.
It also, dude, it sends a message that people are unhappy with how they're governing, and you have a council election coming up in 2022, and this could be seen as a giant wake-up call because there's, 5 districts that are up for election?
And mayor.
And mayor. Although a lot of these guys have their second term and it's been maxed out. But either way, man, like these developer-friendly candidates are the council still has to revamp how they do a lot of things because developer-friendly. Because there's still going to be other developer-friendly candidates that are going to take their place, and they still are beholden to a certain type of developer and a certain type of developers and the real estate industry, and those guys still want their people in office. So it's still going to force the rest of the city council to like actually start listening to the community a little bit more. Just like I think Mackenzie Kelly getting elected was really good, regardless of how you feel about her policy. It's just good because it helps to create a balancing of thought on the council. And it sends a message that, hey, man, you got people that might not be, like, too thrilled about what the city's been doing. And you got a pandemic that's just completely exacerbated that. So that's what I think is honestly going to be the reality-based narrative of what happens. You know,
I agree with that. I think this is an opportunity for us to take the city in a different direction. Now, does that mean we're going to have 10 members of the council that are Republican and a Republican mayor and all this kind of stuff?
No, I would hate that. I would not want that.
I know you
would.
You just made that point. You made the point that it's wrong in both directions. We want a council majority that is, number one, pro-taxpayer. We don't have that now. Number two, pro-public safety. We have one member of the city council that's pro-public safety, Mackenzie Kelly. I think you can clearly argue 9 of the other 10 and the mayor are anti-public safety. I don't even think that's debatable. Third, we want people who are going to be pro-reform. We need reform at our city level. Yeah. There's corruption at the city. That's a huge problem. Fourth, we need people that are going to actually care about affordability. Affordability keeps getting worse. The council keeps making it worse. They pretend they care about it. They pretend they have solutions, but it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Those are the things we need. I think that's a 60 or 70% agenda for the city, and I think you can find Republicans and Democrats to step up in the right districts to run for city council who are going to be focused on that agenda, who just want to make Austin a good place to live, work, and raise a family. That's all we want it to be, and I don't think that's too much to ask.
I don't think so either. I think that you're going to see some changes. I think you're definitely going to see some changes. I think D3 is going to have a momentous change. If you look at District 2, man, David Chinkanchin, the PO's chief of staff, got decimated. You know why he got decimated? Because people in D2 lived in D3 in the past at one point, and they remember how PO sold them up the river, and they saw right through David, and he had the most money by far and got wrecked.
Yeah.
That's a statement. People in D3 are going to feel the exact same way about another urbanist type candidate as they did about David Chinkanchin. 100% believe that. I think that you have a real I think D3 could definitely make some serious changes. I think D5, well, Ann Kitchen's been there forever, so that's going to be a toss-up. But I think D5 could get a person like me very easily, considering the demographics of that district. I think D8 could get like a guy like Brad Swale potentially. Right, and I think that 9 and Mayor are also toss-up. So you definitely
D10, yeah, Paige Ellis up.
Well,
D6.
8.
I mean, what am I saying?
No,
Page 8. You're right. Page 8.
Page
Sorry.
8.
Yeah.
Page 8.
Yep.
And I think like Leslie Poole's pretty cool. I think Leslie Poole's been all right. I even think Alter's been pretty cool too. So I think that like you could definitely restructure how the city council is operating, and then it changes the dynamic. It causes more people to have to live. You want to restore Austin to the way it used to be, but you can never fully bring it back, but you want to like get some stopgap safeguard measures in place because people move from their coastal cities because they don't like it, right? So we got to be empathetic to that.
Well, not only that, I mean, if we want to bring the tech community here, if we want to become a baby Silicon Valley, the next Silicon Valley, it would be a good idea to not have the people who come here then want to leave again. They're leaving San Francisco for a reason.
Yeah.
And Steve Adler and Greg Casar don't understand this, or they pretend not to understand this. They're moving here because the things we're trying, San Francisco tried and they failed. Right? I mean, that is absolutely the case. Look, this is what's so sad about what's happened in the last 2 years, is Austin was really on the move. And you may not like everything associated with that. I understand there's some challenges that come with growth. But we're booming, and we're going to boom whether people like it or not. That's never going to change. We have an opportunity, I think, to make some significant gains with infrastructure. Project Connect is not the answer.
No,
Project Connect is an absolute disaster. It's going to collapse of its own weight. Makes no sense. It's never going to reduce commutes. There are huge presumptions of federal funding as part of it. They're able to take money out of it as a piggy bank to do anything they want with it. It has a 20% property tax increase in perpetuity, even after it's paid for, though it's retroactive. It's bad in 19 different ways. But we're going to get to a point where we have to get serious about infrastructure in Austin. And that's going to happen in the next 10 years.
I think the city needs to start investing in Bitcoin.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean,
no,
yeah.
seriously. Or at the very least, they should be allow people, like when you park your car or use a city service, they should give you. Miami has Bitcoin ATMs.
Absolutely, yeah,
they
there's
should
no problem with that.
allow you to be able to pay in Bitcoin or give you discounts like for certain services if you want to pay in Bitcoin. Or if you want to pay a tax bill and you want to pay it in Bitcoin, they should give you a tax easement. Like they should give people tax breaks if they want to pay their property taxes or whatever city fees in Bitcoin. You want to know?
Idea.
You want to know why? Because the city's going to be getting an appreciating currency, which will in turn give them more money to spend to improve the city and create less of a burden on taxpayers.
Yeah.
Like it seems like a win-win situation.
Okay, but you just said something that makes no sense, and that is you're presuming the city wants to create less of a burden on taxpayers. Everything they do,
I get
Alex,
it.
goes against that. I mean, there's just no evidence that anyone
But it's
up
a
there
win-win
besides
because
McKenzie
they'll be
cares
making.
about taxpayers.
But it's also a win-win because they'll be generating
Sure, they
that
want more
money
revenue.
in a different.
Yeah, they want
they'll
more
be
revenue.
generating
Sure, they want more
from
revenue
that.
because they have an insatiable appetite for spending money.
And if you own Bitcoin, it's also really good for anybody who's a Bitcoin holder, which is an increasing number of people. And our currency is literally worth fucking nothing. Our currency is no different than Dogecoin. When you think about like how we're just printing up money like a cash register, even though
there
it's
is that challenge. I mean, our money does actually exist, which is a nice difference,
Yeah.
perhaps from Dogecoin. But look, to get back to it, I mean, look, I think that what Steve Adler and Greg Casar are going to learn on Saturday, May 1st, is that the silent majority of Austinites are standing up and saying, no, we're going to fix your mess. You've led the city in the wrong direction. You're ruining our city. And if you don't pay attention to this, we're gonna keep educating you.
Dude, you know what I think they should do? I have a couple things, and I wanted to bring it up to Ann Howard, but I just didn't have enough time, right? I think that like every time you park your car, you should be able to have an option to donate money to like a homeless services organization, and this way it's being done voluntarily instead of through you being taxed at a house and home. And also, I think that like if you commit like a nonviolent like traffic crime or like a nonviolent like drug crime where you're not like messing with somebody's property or doing anything like that, they should just tell you to go clean up a homeless camp or volunteer at like a homeless services organization in order to get that off your record. Like that's, and I was talking about that when I was like running for city council. I'm like, or if you're like a kid and you get sent to ALC, right? Or you're like an at-risk kid, they should just have the at-risk kids clean up homeless camps so they can understand what they don't want to be like in life. You know what I mean? And you're cleaning up camps and you're like, you know, ultimately, man, like this homeless thing's out of control, right? And what we got to focus on is homeless prevention for the future.
Yes.
So I think a lot of that stuff would go along.
Agreed. And I think if Greg Casar were here, what he would say right now, and I don't know that I disagree with this, he would say, well, that's what we tried to do with defund. We wanted to move money away from the police towards preventing crimes, to addressing the underlying causes of crimes. I don't believe you could take $150 million, move it out of the police budget into something else, and not have anything good happen. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not arguing that every dollar's been wasted. What I am saying is that cutting 1/3 of the police budget at a time when we're growing, when our violent crime rate's the fastest it's been in 5 years, when we're going to double our all-time homicide record this year, is not a good idea.
Yeah. Or what you do with some of that money is you start teaching financial education. You team up with the financial and the business community and start teaching people in low-income neighborhoods like how to invest in the stock market, how to use cryptocurrency, how to like actually build generational wealth.
The power of compounding interest.
Yes.
Ideas.
You start teaching that in those neighborhoods specifically, and you put the effort in these neighborhoods. Not the Westlakes or the Austin Highs because they already have that, right? Like, you know, they probably already have brokerage accounts that are given stock, like their dad owns a company, right? Like
Sure.
they don't need that, right?
Sure.
But like, you know, the kids that go to Mendez Middle School, you know, the
Sure.
kids that go to Travis High School, they need that, right? The kids that go to LBJ, they need that, right? So like, I think that a lot of people in the business community would be 100% down to try to give back to help other people build the type of wealth that they've built on their own. And I think that when people feel like, hey, I can own a home, or hey, I can go out on West 6th Street, or hey, I can go eat dinner at the same places that like all these white people are eating at, I think it definitely like creates a deterrent. It creates like a sense of like a self-esteem boost or whatnot, right? Which is a deterrent to actually like A, commit crimes, and B, like do things that will lead to homelessness. You know, like I think a lot of that's, we got to be doing a better job of like we got to do a better job of providing financial, like real tangible financial, like education programs and wealth building programs in these areas, you know what I mean? So people don't feel like they have a limited set of options, you know, like that's how I look at it, man. Like, you know what I mean?
No, I agree with that. I think we need to understand what the root causes of homelessness are. And look, I think there's basically 3 distinct populations among the homeless. And I think they all need to be handled differently. The first population are people who became homeless recently. They may have had a unexpected medical bill, may have lost their job, may have had a series of very bad things happen to them. Those people need to get basically assessed quickly, put in rapid rehousing, given job training, get a job again, and then get back on their own. That's a small percentage of the people, but they can be fixed very quickly.
And then when you have a ton of tents, it makes it hard for those people to even do that.
Exactly. The second population, and I had a caseworker today that I was driving around with Deputy Constable tell me he thinks this is 98% of the population. Now, I think it's less than that. I think it's 3/4 of the population. But that is people who are either drug and alcohol addicted or have mental health challenges or both. Right? If you think about it, Alex, these are the people who we least want on the streets.
Yeah.
Right? These are the people who are most desperate. These are the people who are most vulnerable. These are the people who, because they are on drugs and alcohol or because they're not having their mental health challenges addressed, are attacking other people. So those are the people that we want in homeless shelters, in transitional housing, at nonprofit facilities like Community First Village, like Salvation Army, like Camp Esperanza, etc., like hopefully the regulated campground that we will soon have. I understand there's a group trying to put one together.
What about like the Austin State Hospital or these mental hospitals? Like, have we like lost so much funding for building like mental hospitals and those types of facilities?
That's a big topic. We'd probably do an hour on that by itself. The Austin State Hospital has to be part of the solution here. I'm not talking about involuntary commitment necessarily. There are laws that have changed in that regard.
Yeah, I don't really support that anyway, because anybody could get involuntarily committed with the slippery slope of authoritarianism. You don't want to get I
don't want that. But what I am saying is that facility is one we should be using, and we're not. I think Kirk Watson understands that better than most. Our former state senator, former mayor, who's now in Houston. The third group, though, the third part of the population, and this is a tough one. Let's really think about this for a second. I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe it's 10 or 20% of the overall population. But there is a percentage of the population that wants to be homeless and does not want to not be homeless.
Oh, yeah, I know people like that.
They want that lifestyle, the lifestyle of no rules, no responsibilities, do whatever you want, on the living on the land. I don't know what you do about that population, because when you let them camp in unregulated ways, it affects the rest of us.
Well,
they produce human waste. They produce physical waste.
Well, Matt, I know how you could do that.
How?
You provide opportunities and resources for people to like be able to make a quick buck so they can actually travel and have a free-spirited lifestyle. So me as a pedicab driver, right? Like, I get to kind of work whenever I want. I make my own hours. I'm responsible for like paying a lease. But other than that, like I have so much freedom. You know what I mean? Like, I have more freedom than I have like a ton of freedom, and I'm so like eternally grateful for the amount of freedom that I have to be my own independent entity driving this pedicab. And that's a big reason why I was so against these lockdowns too, because I felt like you were taking this one thing that I worked really hard to build and attain away from me, just like that, you know. So you can start providing resources and educating people on finding jobs that can help provide those types of freedoms and not let people be dependent upon the system. I also, fun fact, I used to do PPD, like paid medical studies, when I first moved here.
Yeah.
You know about those, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I did paid medical studies like PPD, the pharmaceutical product development, all that stuff, right? And I made like, $3,000, $2,000, $4,000 a pop doing them. I didn't do a ton,
no, we don't want to force that, but we should
make those opportunities available. Yeah, right. So like maybe some of these guys might not know about that, right? So sure. You do a PPD study and you make $4,000. You know what you could do? You could buy a camper and you could go travel around the country, and then you can go. And then once the money runs out, you can go do another study. Or they have like marijuana growing centers. Like you could work at a grow facility. Like there's so many opportunities where people can go live their free-spirited life and not be a burden on society. And I think we should be allocating resources to help provide these directions and this type of guidance to people.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I agree with that. I would add to that, though, if you think about it, what else does Austin do well? We have major events here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Why are the homeless not being used to clean up UT sports facilities after games? Why are they not being used? Maybe they are. And if they are, I apologize.
I think they were trying to do something with the
South by Southwest,
yeah,
ACL, et cetera. Now, I know the Other Ones Foundation, I was just learning about that today at Camp Esperanza. They pay homeless people to go out and clean up homeless encampments. I went and met with some people. I know that sounds like a circular logic kind of thing, but they have people who they take care of who go out and clean up private areas, maybe even city parks. I'm not sure, but I went out and watched some of them do that today, and they get paid I think $75 a day to do that. I believe.
Not bad.
No, it's not bad at all.
It's not horrible. It's not.
So you're allowed to do 3 days a week maximum.
Yeah.
That's $225 a week, right? That's $900 a month. That's not nothing. It's not enough to live on. I agree with you.
It's not enough to live on.
Housing's too expensive in Austin. I get it. Maybe we should stop, limiting the manufacturing of housing. It takes 18 months in Austin to build a house. In Travis County, it takes 6 months in Hays County, 6 months in Travis County.
Yeah, but then the more you build, the more you inflate the demand, which will make it more expensive too. I grew up in New York, man. I see what happens when they start booming.
It has to be smart. Smart growth. We have to have smart growth.
But you know what that could do? It could, like, you could build a trailer. You could build a mobile home.
Sure.
You could definitely have something that is a place of residence that's not the street.
This is why microhomes are the answer. At least in the short term.
Tiny homes, microhomes, all that stuff
are the answer.
And honestly, if somebody's working, right, and they're, on taking the steps necessary to like improve their position in life, we got to do a better job of offering people other avenues. Because if you're willing to improve your position in life in one facet, you're going to be willing to improve in another facet. That's what I think. So I think that like when you see somebody trying and improving their position in life or trying to grow or trying to do anything, like we owe it to them as human beings. Like if there's an opportunity that they can do well in, to tell them about that opportunity. If they don't do it, that's not my problem. But we should be maybe doing a better job of communicating opportunities.
No question. And listen, I think because of the fact that they're now all over the city in all kinds of places, not centralized, hard to track down, hard to be given help, given services, it's worse now than it's ever been. If you had them all in one place, in a centralized, regulated campground like Haven for Hope, you'd have the services on site. You'd be able to present those opportunities to them. You could keep track of them better. You could have medical facilities on site. You could have drug and alcohol abuse treatment and mental health treatment on site. Look, this has worked in San Antonio.
Yeah.
It's succeeded there. San Antonio is 70 miles south of here. Our entire city council and the mayor ought to rent a cruiser, go down there for 5 or 6 hours, and they'll learn about a successful model that we should replicate here today. Los Angeles has 100,000 homeless people in LA County. They will never solve their homeless problem at that scale.
But they're nonprofits. Are making bank though too.
So there is a financial motivation with some of these groups. We have to be honest about that. There's no question.
So it's like, well, the nonprofits are making bank. Maybe they don't want that, right? So like there's a lot of,
but that's not the answer, though.
Or maybe the developers that are building the hotels for the homeless, maybe they don't want that.
You're right. No, they're not building them. What they're doing is retrofitting them. But you're right. Look, I agree with you. We can't just do things because certain special interests think they're the right thing to do. We have to look at results and data, empirical data. And I think if you compare San Antonio to Los Angeles, we know which model succeeds and which one failed. Let's do the thing that's worked before. Let's not do the thing, and let's stop doing the thing that's never succeeded anywhere it's ever been tried.
100%, 150%.
Yeah.
But next topic, because we all know that Prop B is probably going to pass. I
hope you're right. If you're out there and you haven't voted yet, Saturday, May 1st, 7 a.m., 7 p.m.,
dude,
go vote. SaveAustinAlpaca.com.
There's no way that people are voluntarily wanting to keep the shit the way it is.
SaveAustinAlpaca.com. There's a vote link at the top. You can find all the voting locations on election day. You have to go vote. It's important.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. And then even Adler's saying, it's older white Republicans voting. And I'm like, well, he already knows. They already know the writing's on the wall. It's going to pass, right? But that being said, like, what's going on with the state? I want to talk a little bit about some of what's happening with the state, man.
Yeah. So the state is very serious. The legislature is very seriously considering a statewide camping.
Not
ban.
even
Is that what you're asking about?
Well, no, not even about the camping, because I think that, like I said, if the city passes it, it'll be good. And even if the state passes it, you still got to enforce it. You still need resources to enforce this stuff, right? So that's great, but that's not what I'm concerned about as someone who lives in Austin.
What is you're asking then?
Well, I'm honestly worried that like we might lose our country, right? I really feel that way, especially in 2020 with how the lockdowns are working, with like the authoritarian measures that were kind of being taken to quote unquote slow the spread of this virus. It seems as though like the people that were taking this are either like, neoliberal Democrats, they're actually just Democrats and Democratic leaders in general, and then like establishment neocon rhino Republicans are doing the same thing. And I think that it's been like, conservative governors like the Kristi Noems and the Ron DeSantis's, even Kim Reynolds or whatever, right? Like that have did a really good job of pushing back and not implementing these types of like potentially tyrannical mandates, right?
Well, this is what's amazing is Texas and Florida, which reopened earlier, are doing better with COVID than New York and California, which are still locked down.
100%.
Right. So
And I'm honestly a little critical about how Abbott did this, because I don't think Abbott should have closed the bars a second time. But it is what it is. He did what he did, and I think that Abbott's decision could possibly mess up his chance at actually getting elected. And the way Abbott handled this could very easily cause Texas to go blue gubernatorially.
I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see. It depends who runs and what the environment is. He's going to run for re-election. I believe he'll be reelected. But I understand with you. Look, there's two views on the bar issue. Okay, I think if he were here today, you asked him what mistakes have you made on COVID. The first thing he would say, is that he reopened the bars too soon. Now, you may disagree with that. The reason he would say that is they did not have a plan to make sure bars could reopen safely. They should have required bars to follow the same rules restaurants are following. COVID doesn't care whether you're sitting down drinking a beer or sitting down eating a hamburger. Okay. Either they're both risky or they're both not risky. But the reality is the bars were not prepared for it when they reopened. They didn't require you to sit. They didn't take away chairs at the bar, etc.
Sure, but then Abbott also had like $3 billion in state emergency funds that they didn't even give to these businesses. Maybe I'm wrong, but like they didn't give it to these spots. And
Yeah,
they
and I
should've been
don't know
doing that
enough
right
about I don't know enough about that fund and what went out and what didn't and why it didn't. What I can say is at the city level, what I do know at the city level is, as you know, they have an emergency fund to help restaurants and bars, and they've done it on bars in particular. They've done a horrendous job. Horrendous job. Distributing that money at all, or even in a timely way. In fact, there's no communication at all. I have a friend that owns Iron Cactus, a friend that owns Speakeasy downtown. They both are livid. Now Speakeasy is reopened. You want to go to a bar that's on the reopening page you're on? Go to Speakeasy.
Oh, I know. I've been there.
I know. They're there. And there are a few other bars that are that way as well. And look, they understand that there's really not much risk. If you're high risk or you're over 65, you should be taking COVID very seriously. If not, I don't think
you
there's
should be eating right and exercising, considering the data about the fatalities.
That's
at this point.
true. That's exactly true. That's exactly true.
That's science. It's basic fact.
Sure.
Right? But when Abbott closed the bars, right? He did it on a Friday when they all ordered their $20,000 worth of drinks while they're in the red for being closed for a month, and he just had no regard for the fact that these businesses are just stuck footing the bill for this. None. You know what I mean? So it's just that type of inconsideration. It really rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, look, I understand why restaurants and bars are angry. I really do.
Yeah,
trust me, I do.
Rubbed me the wrong way. But and I think that a lot of people who are on the right are even madder about it than I am. It could create a concern that this guy might actually not. This guy is definitely going to get primaried.
Yeah, I agree. I think he will. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be someone serious, but we'll see.
Depending, you never know. And even if it's someone who's a little bit too right, they can win. And then all of a sudden, a Matthew McConaughey type, maybe even a Beto, but I doubt Beto, right? At this point,
no, Beto's made himself unelectable at a statewide level in Texas with the ridiculous things he said, guns, and not even just that. It's more than that.
I agree with that. But anyway, this is not a rant against Greg Abbott. That's not why we're.
I understand. It's an issue. It's an issue that you have a criticism about. Sure.
I was asking if they use that money to actually give it back to some of these small businesses. I feel like it should be a number one priority.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about that particular issue to answer it, so I apologize. I wish I did. I just don't know enough about it. And look, I don't believe he's made every decision perfectly. I mean, he doesn't believe that. Okay.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe that. But what I would say is Texas has reopened among one of the faster rates than any of the other states.
I think
You're
everything
right.
that's meant
Kristi
to happen
Noem
does.
and Florida were ahead
Everything
of that.
that's meant to happen happens for a reason. And if it's meant to happen, it's going to happen. That's
the
what
challenge
I believe.
The challenge Texas had is that they could, and you know this, they could not have their hospitals get overwhelmed. The smartest thing Abbott did is he went to a regional strategy. When after we had shelter at home and all of that, after they reopened the bars, they closed. He went to he stepped back and he analyzed it. He said, okay, we're going to put I think 16 or 19 regions together, and the regulations we put in place are going to be regional. So if a region has whatever the level it is on positivity rate and hospitalization rate and death rate, as long as it's below a certain threshold, you can reopen. And so when he did that initially, I think only 2 regions were in bad shape. I think it was El Paso, Lubbock, and maybe Rio Grande Valley. It might have been 3. That's where you had some outbreaks.
Maybe Houston, yeah.
All the other regions were totally fine, and they were started to reopen. They got to 25%, they got to 50%, then they got whatever that they're at now. I don't even know if they're at 100% now. I guess they are. So that was smart. And the reason let me tell you why he removed the mask mandate. There's 2 reasons. People don't understand this. He did it for 2 reasons. Number one, the vaccine. J&J got approved, and he knew J&J was going to be mass produced, and that was going to change things. The second reason that I believe he passed the mask mandate is he was tired of suburban and rural counties having to live by a mask mandate that is irrelevant to them, but may apply or may be justifiable in 4 or 5 urban counties. And that's why he went to Lubbock when he announced it.
Disagree.
Okay. I mean, why do you think he did it? I'm not justifying it. I'm telling you this is why he did it.
Here's why I think he did it.
Yeah.
I think he saw his polling numbers for president, and he was at 0% or 0.1% at CPAC. And I think that he lifted the mandates it was 3 days after he saw his CPAC polling numbers. And he's like, oh, yo, this is not good, especially if I'm going to try to be governor next year. I might need to start actually governing a little better. I think that played a role. I think the vaccine could have played a role. I think maybe the cases going down played a role. I think it's a multitude of factors. But I think that the polling probably was the final straw to just be oh shit, I might lose.
Yeah, look, I mean, he's been squeezed on both sides from the very beginning, right? The right's mad he didn't reopen quickly enough. The left's mad he didn't call a special session and do all kinds of crazy things. He's been sort of in an impossible position.
It's one of the toughest jobs. This is one of the toughest states to be governor of right now.
Well, yeah, but honestly, I would argue, and you and I may disagree on this, I think he's done a reasonably good job. You remember when he took the mask mandate off, enormous criticism, right? Beto said people are going to die because of this. I mean, literally, totally over-the-top rhetoric. Yeah. Look at the numbers. They've plummeted. Absolutely plummeted. Among the lowest numbers we've had since COVID started. So, look, again, can you quibble with when he made a decision, whether he went in the right order, whether he moved fast enough, how does it compare to Florida? These are all reasonable questions to ask.
Hey, but let's talk about some of the stuff that's happening legislatively, right?
Sure.
I like that he said no vaccine passports, right? But
at the state level, state government, yeah.
Yeah, but like, couldn't a private company say like, "Hey, you still need to have a vaccine to go stay at my hotel or do stuff like that"?
Yes, and let me just tell you, that's where things are headed. Whether you like it or not,
scary.
let me tell you where it's headed. When we get to herd immunity, whenever that happens, it might be Labor Day, it might be end of the year, who knows? We're like 50% people have been vaccinated at this point in the United States. Herd immunity is generally about 80%. When we get to herd immunity, you're going to have major private companies say, yes, you want to get on a domestic flight or an international flight, you have to have a vaccine passport. You want to go to a large event with 10,000 people or more, sporting event, musical event. Look, I'm not saying this is what they should do. I'm saying this is what they're going to do. Because ultimately, these industries are going to have problems if they have outbreaks. Look at the cruise ships. The cruise ships, I think, are probably
okay. Then why can't you just sign a waiver and say I'm not responsible?
Yeah, because the problem is that you could still have outbreaks in these industries. If you have an outbreak in a movie theater or an outbreak at a cruise ship, it's going to crater that entire industry. Billions of dollars at risk. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I have a problem with vaccine passports as an idea.
It's like the most un-American shit that you can. Like, it's the most un-American anti-freedom thing that you could even do right now. You're putting your data in a private company.
There's that. You also have the HIPAA issues about.
That is a HIPAA issue. Yeah, this is an
issues.
Experimental medication. It's not even FDA approved yet. This is experimental.
They haven't been able to do all the testing they would normally want to do because you had a global pandemic, and it moved very quickly. Look, the fastest we've ever had a vaccine in a global pandemic in world history was 5 years. It happened with mumps. In this case, we had 3 vaccines approved by the FDA within 1 year.
All right.
And that because of Operation Warp
Speed. Sure,
I
understand all that stuff.
Sure.
Right? But, like, what if you've already had COVID and you could show that you have antibodies? Are they going to still say, how are they going to, like, I feel like, yeah, you got to be safe, right?
Let me answer that. Here's the problem. The problem is they don't know how long the antibodies last.
You don't know how long the vaccine's effective for.
That's right, and I think it's going to be like the flu shot. I think you're going to get it every year from now on.
So they're going to have to mandate that I have to take a shot every year in order to go do things?
I don't know. Flu is different, right? Like you're not mandated.
COVID, like
I know, I understand,
COVID,
but like think about it this way: like the flu kills like 60,000 people a year in the United States. Yeah. It killed like 100 this year.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to study why that is.
Okay.
But no one's requiring you to get a flu shot. No one's saying to go to a concert you have to take a flu shot. Now, whether that's where we are next year on COVID, I don't know. It's hard to see the future.
Because if we've got herd immunity and this is not even a problem anymore, there's no justification for them to do that anymore. Like,
I would agree with that. We got to get to herd immunity.
Yeah.
You want to get back to normal life again?
You get to herd immunity with either people having COVID or getting the vaccine. There is no justification to do something like that unless it's under the scope of authoritarianism. And I think that a lot of these hotels, I think that if people push back against it consistently, like, the hotels in Texas are going to lose so much money if they start implementing that, right? Maybe like the Hilton in New York will be okay with it because people in New York are more willing to be compliant.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, I think consumers in Texas are going to be much less willing to be subjected to vaccine passports than you're going to see in blue states. And you might see red state versus blue state approaches. I don't know.
I think so. I think it's a possibility. I also think that like you might see a lot of new businesses start start building as a result of that. And I think that we got to do a better job of like you got to lower a lot of the red tape requirements to actually build new things because like look, let's say like a hotel chain says, yo, you need a vaccine to stay at my hotel, right? Or Airbnb starts saying that stuff like you got to show your vaccine to stay at the Airbnb. Yo, what do you think's going to happen? Like there's going to be some new alternative platform that says, okay, well, we're making a new platform and you don't have to stay there.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's where look, decisions that businesses make affect their bottom line, and there's disruption in every industry. It's always there. The opportunity's always there, and that's what capitalism is.
Right, but we got to make sure we still have capitalism because like look what happened. Look what happened on Amazon when Trump's Twitter got taken off, and then he joined Parler, and then they shut down Parler.
Yeah,
like that's not capitalism.
And that wasn't just Amazon.
Yeah.
I agree. That wasn't just Amazon. It was all the companies together.
Well, you know what I mean. Google, Apple, all the,
That's right.
That's literally fascism. Like that is how fascism happens. You know,
absolutely, and that's what's so disappointing about the direction things are going is that corporate America is now being used as a political weapon. You're seeing this with sort of woke corporate America right now, right? Deciding that they're going to pull out of Georgia because they don't like a specific election law bill.
Okay, but then all that's going to happen is that Donald
Trump
is...
Are they going to pull out Texas when Texas passes a similar bill in a few weeks?
Well, okay, that's fine.
They're going to pull out the second largest state?
But you know what's going to happen then? You'll just have like Donald Trump just having a bunch of rallies to make up for it.
Sure. I mean, look, there are always going to be opportunities. People make decisions. You can react to them. You can look for opportunities. That happens in the private sector, and that's a perfectly fine thing. I just think corporate America has to be really careful about getting too political.
Yeah.
Right? You want to appeal to as many consumers as possible, then you don't get involved in politics.
Well, I think they're starting to realize that if you look at the Oscars, it was down like what 60% or 70%
Yeah,
from
I think
5 years ago.
I think it had fewer than 10 million viewers.
10 million viewers, yeah. Austria, fewer than 10 million viewers. You know, Major League Baseball fan viewership, like TV ratings are plummeting, NBA ratings plummeting.
At a time when everybody's at home, which is weird too.
Yeah. People ultimately care about the dollar. They care about their bottom line. They're going to walk that back. All you got to do is boycott the stuff with your dollar. And if these hotels, if these concert venues, if they start implementing vaccine passports to do X, Y, Z, you know what's going to happen? They're going to lose a bunch of money, and then it'll eventually, even if they do it, it should go away.
Absolutely. And I think what you might see is boutiques that sort of, like boutique hotels that appeal to sort of wealthy liberals may do that kind of thing. I'd be very surprised if Hilton Marriott did that. Very surprised. Those are businesses that require volume, right? Those chains. They have to be 75, 80% full to make money, to make it work, to pay off their note, to pay, to pay the interest.
They're not going to do that unless like the Biden administration says, hey, we're going to give you a bailout because of this. And I could see them trying to do something like that.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it'd be very risky for the government to get directly involved in vaccine passports. If you want to have private companies want to make decisions about their business and their policies, that's one thing. Government should not get involved in this, and I believe Biden has said the federal government is not going to get involved in vaccine passports, and that's a very good thing.
But they also say stuff like that. I saw a Joe Rogan episode, like Dave Smith, I think, and he was like, "Yeah, well, they're saying that because they put, they'll put feelers out, and if they get a backlash, they'll say, oh yeah, well, hey, back burner, try this again in 5 years. Like remember, there was the Obama thing about regulating the internet, and then now it's like okay because of COVID, right? So it's like it really depends on what the new
things can always change. There's no question.
New crisis is like. There's a lot of this stuff like that. All right, last thing we talk about before we wrap up.
Yeah.
What's up with the riot bill?
The riot bill at the state level?
Yeah.
What's up with that is that Senator Don Buckingham, who represents part of Travis County, passed a bill to increase penalties on people who riot.
Sure, that's great.
And to require, I believe it requires jail time for anyone who assaults a law enforcement officer.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, that's already in place.
Yeah,
right?
I believe it passed the Senate. I don't know. I can't remember.
But you already get jail time for assaulting an officer anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I may have stiffened the penalties. I haven't studied it that closely. I've been really busy with this homeless thing. But yeah, that's the idea.
Here's my question, though.
We're a pro-law enforcement state. If the Democratic Party doesn't want to be pro-law enforcement,
I understand that.
They can deal with that.
Here's my question, though, right?
Yeah.
I'm driving my car, right? I'm minding my own business. And a group of people, and look, I've talked to most BLM protesters. Most of them are actually pretty cool, and they just want to do the right thing, right? So I'm not attacking, like, BLM protesters or any like Antifa or any of these. I'm not attacking anybody. But once in a while, you'll get in a situation where you'll get a bunch of like crazy fucks that will just swarm your car, start attacking you for no reason whatsoever.
Sure.
Right? That could that is a possibility that could happen, especially
in
the politically tense climate that we're in.
Yeah.
And I'm driving my car. Am I allowed? Like, how protected am I going to be defending myself in my own vehicle if I feel threatened? Like if I have to drive through the crowd because I genuinely feel threatened, does that law
you have to have a credible does
that law protect me doing that? If I see like my business, like let's say hypothetically, God forbid, somebody starts messing with the Pedicab shop, or I work at a bar and people start rioting and destroying like the bar, which you saw in the summer, and I have a gun or whatever, a weapon, and I start firing at the crowd to defend my business, am I protected?
So I don't know enough about the bill to know whether you'd be protected in that situation. What I can tell you is I believe the law allows you to defend yourself if your life is being threatened. You can use deadly force as a citizen to protect yourself if your life is at risk.
But even if you see somebody else being attacked, like you see what happened with like Kyle Rittenhouse in like Wisconsin and whatnot, and like I think it's crazy people are putting him and Dylan Roof in the same category. That's disgusting, right?
Totally
and I'm going to talk to a lot of people. I got like some other like activists that are going to come on, and I'm going to share those concerns, right? But like. That situation.
Yeah, I don't know enough about his situation. I mean,
well, he put out a fight. He was a 17-year-old kid. He took a gun across state lines.
Yeah, he went and got
stupid thing to do, right?
Yep.
But he was
that
there.
raises the question whether it's premeditated.
Okay. Well, he took it there maybe to protect himself.
Yeah.
Or he's like, hey, if I see something really horrible happening, I'm going to protect myself in case, right? And there was a trash fire, and he tried to put out the trash fire with his fire extinguisher. He probably saw videos of people in those same positions getting beaten up by mobs of people, and he's like, oh, I'm bringing this gun to protect myself in case I have to do the right thing and something can happen, right?
Sure.
Benefit of the doubt. And then, sure enough, he got attacked by somebody, right? And he fired his gun. And then the people in the crowd probably, like, in their all honest assessment of everything, probably thought that he was just some terrorist shooting at them. So they attacked him and tried to get the gun away from him. And he was like, oh, fuck. These guys are trying to kill me. And then he fired off a few more rounds and shot 2 more people, right? And then he left.
Yeah.
So there's a possibility that the situation could have been like interpreted where, Kyle genuinely thought that his safety was in danger because he was trying to do the right thing, and then the people at the riot or the people protesting
Yeah.
thought that their safety was in danger because they could have maybe really believed that like a white supremacist madman was shooting at them. So
No,
I think that there's like a
misconception
total
on both sides. Yeah.
misconception, conflated thing, right? But like, I feel like what's happening to him right now is is absolutely disgusting, and I don't think that I think that you as an American citizen should have the right. Like if I see like if you have a store, right, or if any of my friends has a store or restaurant, and I see it getting vandalized or messed with or destroyed, like the way we saw, I should be able to protect my friend's store, my friend's business, or my friend's like.
Yeah, I think
like that. That's what I'm saying.
I understand. The better approach in that situation is always to call the police.
Yeah. Well, good luck in that.
The problem is
response
rates have gone up because we defunded our police. So
yeah.
all these things are connected.
And then you have a DA with the lowest
right.
sentence. Like then you have.
Not only that, I mean, the DA
stuff,
has said he's not going to prosecute anyone who was engaged in rioting after the after the George Floyd situation. So that's why the state's passing the law, right? The state is saying, look, you want to have a DA that doesn't want to prosecute criminals on this issue. If you're going to attack law enforcement or if you're going to riot, you're going to violate a state law, and the state will prosecute you. So, look, the state is trying to basically fix Austin's messes as many places as possible. When Austin stops being crazy and just goes back to being weird, we'll all be better off. But right now, Austin's unsafe, and it's going to become less safe throughout this year. That's why we have to win on May 1st on this homeless issue, and then we're going to have
we're going to win. We're going
to major fights.
You're going to win in that, but I think ultimately, in order to actually win and create and like get these solutions passed, you got to communicate. And I think that a lot of like people got to get out of their echo chambers.
We do.
You got to get out of your echo chambers. You got to talk to people on every side of the political aisle. You got to go into like.
And it's not about Republican versus Democrat.
No, fuck no. It's not at all.
Yeah.
You got to go into like neighborhoods that you might not feel as comfortable going into, and you got to just be like a helpful, like try your best to just be a good person and communicate.
So in the spirit of that, Alex, let me just wrap up by saying this. If you're out there and you're part of a group, maybe it's a neighborhood association, maybe it's a church, maybe it's an activist group, whatever it is, I don't care where you are ideologically. If you'd like to meet me or hear from me or talk to me or give me feedback, email me. I'll go talk to your group, matt@saveaustinnow.com. You can, I'm happy to go do that. I want to do exactly what you talked about. I want to have uncomfortable conversations with people that we might disagree on a lot of things. But my guess is 80 or 90% of the people in this city want a safe city, want a city where taxpayers are respected, right? Where affordability is made better, and where you can feel confident, you can live, work, and raise a family.
Agreed. And I think that like the big problem too, like this is how I'll wrap it up too. Like I think the big problem is that like a lot of, especially I think people who are like on the very like left end of the spectrum, they'll see people like us maybe like criticizing BLM or criticizing the homeless or criticizing criticizing a bunch of situations that are occurring right now, right? And I think like a big problem in that in the past has been people criticize, but they don't offer solutions to make it better.
Yep.
Right. So I think that like ultimately the focus has to be, well, I'm criticizing because my solution I think is going to be a better solution, and I'm going to like put myself out there to sell that solution to the public. So that I think that's got to be like the message that continues to get conveyed is like, all right, well, I'm not going to just sit around and like criticize BLM and not do anything to try to help black people. Like that's fucked up. Like that is racism, right? But if you're criticizing BLM and you're like, yo, man, like why is stock market investment 50% lower in black communities? We should fix that. Let's actively team up with banks to fix that, right? Why is the generational wealth at like 17% compared to white people? Like, why fix that?
We've got to be about solutions.
Yeah. Why don't we like, use the business community and like use the tech community and just you utilize social media to educate like black entrepreneurs in accepting cryptocurrency payments and doing stuff like that. Like you start doing that, all of a sudden now you're selling a solution that can make things better. That's I think the main focus and what this should all be about is selling. It's not enough to complain about problems and get angry. It's about selling solutions, and it's not even enough to be pro law enforcement. The best way to be pro law enforcement is to actually offer viable solutions to what's happening that help everybody. So let's wrap up on that, man.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
All right, hey, Matt Mackowiak, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on.